Hello and welcome to Sophie & Co. I'm Sophie Shevardnadze. Today we're in beautiful Verona for the third annual Eurasian Forum. Business heavyweights and distinguished public figures are here from EU and Russia to try and mend the fences damaged by the recent political turmoil. Today we're going to speak to the former Italian Prime Minister, also former head of the European Commission, Romano Prodi, and we're going to ask him how best to do just that.
With EU-Russia relations at a historic low point, sanctions appear cemented in place, causing nothing but damage to both sides. And as the EU heads towards recession, how much longer can the standoff continue? Are there any winners in this situation? How do you switch from confrontation back to cooperation?
Mr. Prodi, thank you very much for being part of our program today. It's great to see you again. Now, the EU could lose up to 40 billion euros because of the sanctions in the course of 1 year. That's according to the European Commission's estimates. Did you expect the sanctions to be such a major blow, actually?
Look, the sanctions are a tragedy for both sides. You know, they are done to do damage. They exist because they make damage, and so this is why I think we have to do any effort to, let's say, normalize the situation. You know, I am really worried because it's absolutely natural that between European Union and Russia there are sanctions. If this happens, it's because we have done mistakes, both of us. I don't want to go back to history. But now our rate of growth because of sanctions is decreasing. Our farmers, of course, are unhappy. On the Russian side, it's the same thing. Price of food is increasing. The ruble is going down. And your budget is in worse condition. Tell me one advantage of sanctions. So, what I think is that we have to meditate how to step back in order to restart the negotiation.
Are we talking about lifting the sanctions slowly?
Of course. Our goal must be that sanctions must be lifted. You know, because if, I repeat, they are damaging both of us, so we have to create the political condition to lift sanctions.
You know, the American Vice President, Joe Biden, has said recently, actually in his speech in Harvard University, that America had to embarrass Europe into imposing sanctions on Russia. He later apologized. But it was a little weird. I mean, what did he mean? Does it mean that Washington has a sway over Europe?
Well, I don't look at the intention. I simply tell you that trade between United States and Russia is nothing, peanuts, and trade and relation between Russia and Europe are so important, you know. So I don't say that Biden was telling the truth or not because of Freud, but I simply tell you it's absurd that we go on in this situation. Clearly, to get out of it, we must remake mutual confidence.
Sure, but I think what he meant is that Europe would not have imposed sanctions if it wasn't from pressure from America. Do you think it's the case? If America wasn't pressuring Europe, would Europe impose sanctions?
Yes, I think historically it's okay.
So you think it's because of America that Europe imposed sanctions?
Because of America, because of a mix-up because of different European opinions and a clear, strong American opinion. So the result was a policy probably stronger than the Europeans alone could have taken. Certainly, even among the Europeans, there was a strong tension about Ukraine. And so I don't, look, I don't like to spend time to analyze what could have been happened if. My strong will is what can we do in order to reconstruct a common confidence. There was a common confidence between European Union and Russia. And till the Iraqi war, in the first years of my commission, we were really building up a correct and idea of a long-term cooperation.
Partnership. But you brought up Ukraine, and that's obviously a huge stumbling point between Russia and the West. I mean, that's why the sanctions are actually taking place. And because of this Russian-Ukrainian dispute, we're talking there may affect a gas supply to Europe. Now, for instance, Russian gas supply to Italy accounts to 30% of its gas supply, right? Moscow says that it will keep the gas flow intact. But are you confident that Ukraine is a very reliable transit supplier? Are you sure that there won't be any disruptions?
Look, when I was president of the European Commission, I was also surprised being in Kiev to mediate because there were accusations of stealing gas from the pipes. So it's an old problem. The problem is that if Ukraine has always had difficult internal political problems, if we don't understand that we have to do all in order, let's say, to make Ukraine life easier, and we shall enhance the internal tensions of Ukraine with all the consequences of the political instability of that. We cannot use Ukraine as a battlefield. You cannot use Ukraine in order to enhance our influence. This is the real change of mind that we must build between Russia and Europe. Of course, we need to do that. We need strong commitments. Let's say on European side, that Ukraine will never be part of NATO. I have given the example, because when I was Prime Minister of Italy, the last year, because I was close to the non-confidence vote of the end of my government, but we were in Bucharest, yes, in the NATO meeting, and Germany, France, and Italy, we put the veto on the proposal of the American president to have Ukraine and Georgia into the NATO in order to respect the fact that Ukraine cannot be Russian, cannot be European, and must be some sort of cushion, some sort of, with respect of all of us. And then, on the Russian side, of course, the engagement not to have interference with armaments, then to guarantee the expression of people and the autonomy of the region, the use of the Russian language. We have to not to use Ukraine as a power instrument.
Okay, it's a great prospect. What you're saying is a very correct theory and strategy. But as things stand right now, there are problems and they need to be fixed.
Of course, yeah.
Do you think Ukraine is capable to supply gas to your country, to Italy, without disruption this winter? Because I've heard Italian energy minister come out and say the country is preparing for winter without Russian gas.
Well, it's not easy to be without Russian gas, as you know, because we have almost 40% of Russian gas supply. We have good reserve. We can for some months, and in the long term we can do without, But you know very well that if there are no tensions between Russia and Europe, on the Ukrainian side, it will be impossible to put any obstacles to the flow of gas. Also.
You don't think Ukraine could steal Europe-bound gas that's flowing through the pipelines?
No, if there is an agreement between Russia and Europe, the degree of freedom to do that is very, very, very limited. It's the real interest is to work together. Because Russian industry is making an effort to modernize itself. Can you do it without Europe? No. We need to be safe in our long-term energy, natural resource strategy. Can we do without Russia? No.
So if you can't do without Russia, let me ask you this. Why do you think Europe is halting the construction of South Stream project? Because it would seem that it would take care of all gas supply problems from Russia to Europe, withstanding Ukraine. Why do you think? What's your personal opinion on this? Are these unofficial sanctions as well?
I answer in a very common sense answer. It's this pipe can be done. I don't want to get into the problem, also because, as you know, I was offered to be president of that, and I refused it, not because I don't share the idea, but because being Prime Minister, when we decided to do it, I didn't want to have, let's say,
financial involvement. Yes.
But, Madam, if there is an agreement with Ukraine, why should you need it? You need South Stream just because there is no confidence that the system is working.
But this has been going on for years. It's not the problem just this year or last year when you were Prime Minister, and right after in 2006, same problems arose with Ukraine and gas supply to Europe.
Yes.
Why just not have the South Stream and get rid of that problem? What do you think?
Well, there are also the problems of cost.
Just costs?
Or
politics?
It costs a lot. Costs and politics.
What's more, costs or politics?
I don't know, because I think that cost is important for the company engaging in it. Politics for the governments who are behind the construction companies.
Mr. Prodi, we're going to take a short break right now. When we come back, we'll continue talking to Romano Prodi, Italy's former Prime Minister, former head of European Commission. We'll talk about what is EU's economic policy for the future, and also what's EU going to do with this huge migration problem. Stay with us. And we're back to the second half of Sophie & Co. We're talking to Italy's former Prime Minister and former head of European Commission, Romano Prodi. Russia is proposing one way to tackle the Ukrainian problem. I'm sure you have heard just recently. Russia has proposed that EU should help Ukraine pay off its gas debt. Do you think Europe is ready to pay for Europe? For example, for Ukraine, is Italy ready to pay its own money to help out Ukraine in this crisis? That's one way to solve the problem.
Look, and why not Russia?
Because Russia has already given a lot of free gas to Ukraine, and Ukraine owes a lot of money to Russia.
Look, when the Ukrainian crisis started, in the tension, it was naive, but my first reaction was, look, will be disaster, will bring economic problems to everybody. So, and my friend asked me the solution. The solution is very simple. We put on the table, Russia will put on the table $5 billion, $5 billion the Europeans, $5 billion the Americans, and we start to cooperate to reconstruct Ukraine.
But is Europe ready to pay 5 billion? Not 20, but 5. That's a good start. That could take care of the problems in the beginning.
With Russia and United States.
But you're you won't help Ukraine on your own.
No, because when I tell Ukraine is a bridge, I am serious. I am coherent. Ukraine cannot be Russian, cannot be European. We have to be serious in interpreting geography, history, and all the political environment. We cannot escape to reality. And so this is why I said, look, I know that was absolutely naive because it was the moment of tension. But when you have this tension, the only way is to have a great political vision and say, look, let us avoid to damage ourselves as we are doing. Because you started the interview today underlining the damage,
yes, absolutely,
the damage that we are doing to ourselves. And, to avoid the damage is to cooperate with a political solution. And the political solution is what I hinted you before, that everybody make a step back in order to help Ukraine to make a progress.
You just said a very interesting thing. You said Ukraine cannot be European, it cannot be Russian, it cannot be American.
Yes.
You were, I remember back in the days, a great proponent of EU enlargement. I remember
yes.
we had an interview.
Yeah, I did it.
Yes. But however, the EU's drive to the east, in a way, is responsible for the conflict in the east of Ukraine. Was it worth it? See, because half of the country wants to be in the EU and the other half doesn't.
Well, if you may hint that there were people who overdid, okay, but my European policy of enlargement was really always conscious of the consequence. I never had any major tension with Russia, never. I did the enlargement because it was a moment of, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, of real unrest, and without enlargement, all Europe should be in really tension. So, but I knew where to stop. And I repeat, when we had pressure to have Ukraine and Georgia into NATO, I said no.
Mr. Prodi, I want to talk to you a little bit about Europe and what's going on inside the EU right now, because you are a specialist. You're actually
I was.
Well, you still are, I believe.
I am retired since long time.
I'm sure you're following the course of events. You were also a great supporter of European integration, and you were head of the Euro Commission when Euro was adopted. As of today, are you happy with the things they look right now?
If you think that I am happy how things have gone, I am unhappy. But it was European Union, it was an historical necessity, and it is even now an historical necessity. And so we have to do it better, but if we go back, it will be a tragedy, and so clearly the change inside Europe are so unexpected, and then there is a different leadership, because of the populist party. You had in the last year European leaders generally afraid. The years of hope are over, and now there are the years of fear. But I am not a pessimist.
Yeah, but okay, you're like last of the Mohicans, you're like an optimist about what's going on in Europe. But if we talk technically, all right, it seemed that Europe is just over the debt crisis, but then the International Monetary Fund comes out and says that EU is headed for a recession. And it's true that structural reforms aren't taking place, and you have France and Italy, they don't want to cede their economic sovereignty to Brussels. Many would even say to Germany. Why is that? And also, how can euro work in these circumstances?
Look, when we built the euro, it was clear that this needed to be accompanied by a common policy, common financial and common economic policy. I did remember when I was raising this problem to the German Chancellor Kohl, he was telling me, you are an Italian and you know that Rome was not done in one day. And then we shall do it. But the problem is that the new leaders, they didn't have the same confidence in the future of Europe. We went back to the natural borders. And, this was unforeseen, So I do understand that we cannot go on forever with a monetary union and not a political and economic union. But I know that history will push us in the direction of the union.
How? Because right now, the way things are looking is that you cannot have a uniform economic policy if there is no political integration within the member states. And it does seem that the political integration is really hard to achieve because every state wants a different thing, especially economically.
But you are arguing as if people don't understand from experience, I imagine that this difficult moment, even Germany now is below zero in this moment. They had 2 terms of negative growth, I'm confident that people learn the lesson from history. So if you are so pessimistic that nobody learns anything, okay, you're right. We go to the end of all the European adventure, but this is not in the spirit of also of the most skeptical Europeans. They want a different Europe. They want a Europe more engaged to growth, more engaged to social equality, but very few want to go back to the nations. The experience of the fighting nations was too bad.
Mm-hmm. I just want to, because we don't have much time left, want to touch upon another huge problem for Europe is obviously, and in Italy in particular, is the flow of illegal immigrants from Northern Africa. Now we have Ebola that's rampaging Africa. Do you fear that that could actually spread to Italy? Are any measures being taken? Are these migrants actually being monitored in some way when they enter Italy?
Now there is more political cooperation, but the problem goes beyond that. Because if we don't work together, and when I say together in this case it's Russia with Europe also, in the African countries, in order to help development, the number of immigrants will increase. Second, they come to Europe as they're coming now because Libya is a fake state, and so we need to make a common policy in order to, let's say, to help the reconstruction of the country, because otherwise there will be no possibility of tackling the problem.
It seems that you are actually asking other EU members to help you with this migration problem. Do you think that this Italy migration problem could spark a EU-wide action?
Now there is a decision of cooperation with Europe, but this will not solve the problem because it's a cooperation when the immigrants arrive. But the problem is that we have to work where they are starting from. Because when they arrive, And when they arrive from the sea, you cannot put human beings in the sea. The problem is to stop and to help them to live there from where they are living, But now, in Libya, you cannot do anything. And population growth is a pressure that will not stop in 1 year, or 10 years, or 20 years. This is a problem of humanity. Remember that in this moment in the world, there are 250 million people who are resident in countries in which they were not born. So, immigrants. Can you believe? 250 million people who move it from a country to another one. We have to tackle this problem.
Mr. Prodi, thank you very much for this wonderful interview. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.